So again, I'm welcoming everyone to this session titled "Relocating to Canada through the Express Entry Program and then Other Pathways." And the other pathways I'll be talking about is the Provincial Nominee Program under the FSW stream. Okay. So again, my name is Casey. Um, I relocated to Canada from Nigeria in 2020, just after COVID, after they relaxed the COVID rules and everything. And ever since, I've been working towards trying to educate people on how to relocate to Canada. Um, we set up, myself and the team set up Prep the Well in 2020 as well, where we started teaching people how to ace the IELTS, because the entire process only works when you ace the IELTS. But I'll get into the requirements needed for you to create an Express Entry profile. So without wasting anyone's time, let's get started. All right, so when you decide on wanting to get on this program, there are a few things that you need to check before you can conclude that you are eligible for the um, Express Entry program. The Express Entry program for Canada is points based, so it's PBS, points based system. So you need to, there's something they call the minimum eligibility criteria, which you need to meet in order for you to be eligible for you to actually apply for the Express Entry program. Now, some of you might be wondering, why Express Entry? Just as the word is defined, Express, it's sort of like a quick way to becoming a permanent resident in Canada without having to go through the rigorous paper-based application. So paper-based application is a different route for which people can also relocate to Canada, but then as permanent residents. But you would only qualify for the paper-based application because you don't qualify for the Express Entry. Now, why wouldn't you qualify for the Express Entry program? Is because of things like age, whether you meet the criteria for language, whether you have the requisite education to match up the knock, the profession that you're actually trying to do. If you have enough skills for the experience which you're applying for. So as the slide says, it talks about the various things that you can actually meet, the minimum requirements for you to actually be eligible for the Express Entry. So there's skilled work experience, there's language ability, which is the IELTS, the PTE, which they only recently introduced, CELPIP for those who know about CELPIP, and then I think there's one more, I'm not sure, but and then of course there's education. You might be wondering, if I didn't go to school, so if I didn't go to the university, do I still qualify under the Express Entry route? Secondary school education is allowed as well. Now, remember I said the Express Entry is a points-based system, right? If you don't meet a certain minimum eligibility criteria, so MEC, you may not qualify for the Express Entry if you don't meet that minimum eligibility criteria. Now, the minimum eligibility criteria is scored out of 100. You need to get a minimum of 67 points before you are eligible to be in the pool for Express Entry. So I hear people using things like the CRS calculator, and then when they've simulated their scores, they get to maybe 200 and something or 300 and something, and then assume that they are eligible to get into the express to the pool. That's how people put it in quote, to get into the pool. But unfortunately, it doesn't work out like that. I mean, that gives you sort of like an idea of what your score is going to be. However, actually creating or entering creating your Express Entry profile is the best and only way to identify whether you're eligible for that program. All right. So you might think that on the CRS calculator, you have a score of 275 or 295. But then when you create your express entry profile, you only realize that you're ineligible. So it says your profile is ineligible. And then you begin to wonder, if I created my profile on the CRS calculator, which is a website that is designed by Canada, IRCC, why is the express entry profile telling me that I'm ineligible? It's something called the MEC, the minimum eligibility criteria. All right. There are certain factors that are considered under the MEC. Age, how old are you? Do you fall within a certain age bracket? If you fall outside a certain age bracket, you score 0 on the age. A certain level, so like the education, if you have a PhD, there's a point for PhD. There's a point for those who have a master's degree, BSc, HND, OND, um, and then of course 1 year program, 2 year programs, or just a basic elementary maybe WAEC, just like those who are in Nigeria. Then you move to the work experience. There is a number of points you get for having 1 year work experience, 2 year work experience, and the maximum 3 year work experience. If you don't have up to 1 year work experience, so the minimum amount of work experience you need to have to be eligible for the express entry is 1 year. If you have less than 1 year, you will not be eligible to apply under the experience express entry program for Canada. So again, I repeat, the minimum number of years to be eligible for creating your express entry profile is 1 year. The maximum number of years for which you can gain points, I'll say that again, points, for which you can gain points is 3 years. So even if you had 10 years work experience in a particular field, you only get the maximum point for 3 years. So if it's 25 points for 3 years, it's 25 points for 10 years. All right. For some people who have relocated to Canada via the Express Entry program, they had valid job offers in Canada. So there are opportunities where you could apply for a job either through LinkedIn or sending your CV to a particular company. They run an interview with you and then decide, okay, you know what, we actually want to give you the job. With a job offer, you can get about 50 points on your CRS calculator, as well as getting points on your MEC as well. Then there's the language skills. You either present an English language result or French, or both. In order to qualify for express entry, you need to have a minimum score on English language, 6 in listening, 6 in writing, 6 in speaking, and 6 in reading. Any less than that in any module will make you ineligible for the express entry program. You can have a 5.5, so less than 6 in English, but because you've passed or you met the criteria for French, then made French your first language, then you could still be eligible. So English can be your first language and then French your second language, or vice versa. French being your first language and then English your second language. Then adaptability. Adaptability is what they call, so for instance, you have a sibling in Canada who's a permanent resident or a citizen, then you get 5 points under the MEC, minimum eligibility criteria. And then, of course, you also get an extra 15 points on the CRS calculator as well. So on your CRS. So with these selection factors, you would then decide or understand whether you are eligible to apply under the express entry program. If you don't apply, if you don't meet those minimum eligibility criteria, of course, attaining 67 points out of 100, it doesn't mean that you don't have the opportunity of relocating to Canada as a PR. You can also apply under the under the paper-based application. So for instance, your 50 years old, right? At 50, there's a likelihood that you don't even get any points on age. Or then you're 50 years old and then you have just a BSc. By the time you create your profile, even if you had a maximum score on English, you will most likely, I mean, this is from experience again, you will most likely not be eligible to meet the minimum eligibility criteria for which you will be in the pool for. Now, at that point, you shouldn't be dismayed. You can apply via the paper-based route. Now, applying via the paper-based route requires you to now go to the individual provinces and then finding ways whether you can meet their own criteria for relocating to their province based on your skill set, your skill level. All right. Now, if you meet their criteria for relocating, for instance, to Saskatchewan or to Manitoba, then you would take the nomination for which they've given you a letter for and then apply to IRCC, to the government of Canada, saying that you now have a nomination letter. So the province of Saskatchewan or the province of Alberta have nominated you to reside in their province. And with that nomination letter, you can then move forward to IRCC, the government of Canada, and then apply for permanent residency status. Okay. So all that I was talking about, 67 points, and then improving, there are things that you could do to improve your points. So you can improve your language skills, you can complete a second program just to boost your points on the MEC. You could also receive an offer letter from as employment from a Canadian company. If you happen to have a sibling who also wants to join, relocate to Canada, you can encourage that sibling because the person has a better chance. You don't have to be the one who goes first. You can encourage your sibling to go ahead of you. That sibling gives you an extra 5 points on the MEC. So if you want 62, for instance, right, and you were ineligible to enter Canada because you didn't meet, well, you were ineligible to enter to create an express entry profile. I beg your pardon, right? Because you lost points on age. If you were 62 points and then your sibling who is about 27 or 28, it meets the criteria and is about to get, or I mean, can enter the pool, encourage that sibling to complete the process and relocate. Once the sibling touches down Canada, right, and is confirmed a permanent resident of Canada, he will immediately on that same day, well, he won't give you the 5 points, but you are eligible to claim 5 points because he's now a confirmed permanent resident. So if your sibling moved to Canada today and then calls you up and says, okay, yo, brother Jumbo, I'm now in Canada, confirmed. You can go back into the pool and then there's a section that says, do you have a sibling, a mother or a father, an aunt or an uncle, or a stepsister or a stepbrother who is resident in Canada as a permanent resident or Canadian citizen? The minute the sibling has landed, just say yes and then put the province. If you were ineligible before, you'll be eligible then because you've now moved from 62 points to 67. All right. So this is not a race that you need to make on your own. If you know that one of your siblings can give you certain points to get you to move forward, by all means, encourage that person because it could be the reason for you to also relocate. Okay. So I talked about the CRS tool, where people are, let me see if I can open this. Let me go to it. Okay, so there's a CRS calculator, and I believe everyone can see this. So this is a CRS tool that allows people sort of like have an idea as to what their score could be. So I'll use random um, a random person's profile just to give you an idea of how it works. All right. So for instance, this person is never married, and I'll pick an age of about 34. Yeah. And then the person only has a bachelor's degree. and not. So I'm actually teaching you how to use this application so you can do it yourself without having someone to do it for you. So one of my our team members would share the link as well. If you are quick with your hands, you can copy it. Then have you earned any Canadian degree? Most people haven't. So you say no. Have you taken the IELTS within the last 2 years? You say yes. Which language test score? So you see, you can, there's the CELPIP General, there's the IELTS, there's the PTE Core, TEF, TCF. So for the sake of simplicity, let's use IELTS. So I want to say that this person is sort of like meets the CLB 9, so the Canadian language benchmark 9. So CLB 9 for IELTS, right? So 8777. He doesn't have a French, he doesn't have any French results. He hasn't taken the test. You get to work experience. Now, this talks about work experience in Canada. Most people don't have any work experience in Canada, so they say no. But foreign skilled workers work experience, which is this one, right? You can see the maximum score. So 3 years or more, you don't get any more than, you don't get any more points more than 3 years. So you pick 3 years. If you have worked for 3 years in a particular skill set or field. Now I'm going to tell you the impact of what having a 3 year work experience does compared to what having a 1 year work experience. Okay. Do you have certificates of qualification from a Canadian? So most people again say no. Then do you have the LMIA? This is LMIA for those who have work permits gotten from a Canadian employer. That's what's called LMIA. So for some people, they can get this applying to companies and then come in as workers, just temporary work residents. So they work for a period of 2 years. It's a closed work permit. You work for a period of 2 years and you are expected, well, not expected, but then if you wanted to renew that work permit, you just apply for another 2 years if the company is still employing you, right? So we say no to this because we don't have one. Have you been nominated by a province? So this is where I tell people that if you're not getting selected by the draws that happen either bi-weekly or every other month, you can go to a province and then apply directly to the province. And if the province thinks that your particular skill set is good enough for their province, then they will nominate you. And if they do, you can select yes to this. But for the sake of this presentation, I want to say no. And then this is the part that talks about the adaptability of you having someone in Canada. So it says, do you have someone who is a permanent resident or a citizen that is 18 years or older? So if you have a niece, a sister who is a permanent resident, but then is 14 years, you can't claim points from that person. So the person has to be 18 years or older. So it talks about related to you or your partner, but then this person is single. So I would say the person doesn't have one. A brother or sister related by blood, adoption, or marriage. Stepbrother or stepsister, right? So I want to say no. And then if we calculate the results, we have a score of 402. For, remember, a 34-year-old who has a bachelor's degree. So 402 is a near realistic score that the person would have if they went and created their profile. Now, what is the impact of this person having a master's degree, for instance, and still maintain the IELTS score, still maintain the work experience, still doesn't have a sibling or a nomination letter? If we click on that, the score jumps to 442. You can see that the difference between having a master's and a BSc, right, is about 40 points. Now, this person who is 34, his birthday is tomorrow. What happens in that situation when he adds another year while still waiting to be called? So we make him 35. Let's see what impact that has on the 442 we have. Again, every other thing is staying the same. he loses what? He's supposed to lose 5 points, right? It drops. So every time you add another year, you lose 5 points from your total CRS score. Okay. So most people, when they get into the pool, they have 1 year to get called by either a province or by any of the general draws. And if they don't get called within 1 year, their profile becomes ineligible as well. And then they have to create or jump into the pool again. So you can come to this link and play around. Okay, so let me drop this 3 years. I said I was going to drop this 3 years to 1 year. It was 436 before, it's 411. Now, if this person had 1 year experience and had a BSc and it's 35, but I mean, realistically speaking, most people who go to school, universities, have a bit more than 1 year experience. But let's put this person at 27 instead. Bachelor's degree, scored a CLB 9, but has 1 year experience. 404. So this tool is out there to help you have an understanding of what you need to do to improve your chances of getting selected in from the express entry from the pool. Okay. So going back to the slides, I think I've pretty much touched a lot on this part. So how to create an express entry profile. So there's a link for that. Again, I like to be hands-on, so I have a different way of going into the express entry profile. So the minute you put cic.gc.ca, you come into this particular screen, and then you click on My Application. From My Application, you go straight to sign in or create an IRCC account. You can either register an account here, but I like to go the easy way. So you click on GCE key and then select sign up. Click on accept, and then you need to meet a certain criteria here. For instance, you want to say John Bull, right? You need to understand that the name that you select here as a username must meet this username checklist. So I click next, and then it tells me, oh no, the username you selected is not available, only because some other person has selected John Bull. Now, I don't think someone has selected John with an O, with a 0 rather. So no one has selected that. So I can now create a password that again that meets the password checklist. So now hitting continue gets you to the next screen where you have to create security questions. I'll just put any random thing. KC seminar. So you can use this just so you can remind yourself. I like to use so when I was creating mine, I used Valentine's Day just to remember my recovery questions. So 2020 0214. But I wouldn't use the hint as Valentine's Day, so I would say Christmas Day, just in case someone hacked my system. So they think that they're going to put Christmas Day as the hint, but then it's not Christmas Day, it's Valentine's. Then I'll put in my email address, John Bull at prepmewell.com, John Bull at prepmewell. The minute I hit continue, yeah, it's going to send this, and I hit continue, and then a confirmation code comes to my email address. So johnbull at prepmewell.com doesn't exist, so I cannot show you what it looks like on the profile. But once you get here, it's all you need to do is just take the code from the email and then put it into this confirmation code and then hit continue and then Bob's your uncle. It will now get you into the profile where you can now create your Express Entry profile. So you start putting in things like your name, your date of birth, your IELTS results, and all that nuts. Yeah. Now, submitting an expression of interest. Now, a lot of people say, okay, you know what, I've been in the pool for a couple of months and I haven't been selected because the scores are relatively high and I cannot meet it. How else can I come into Canada if I don't meet the high scores? The last draw for agriculture was 431 or so. The last draw for transport was 431 too. That of STEM was about, I think, 491, if I'm not mistaken. Um, for health, 417, 422. So depending on the category for which you find yourself in, if you do not meet that score, you need to find another way to get into Canada. And one other way is to apply via the province. Get a nomination letter from one of the provinces. So you will be applying directly to the province, meeting their own criteria. And once you've met their criteria, then you will take your nomination letter or you will come to your, so by the time they say, okay, you know what, we um we are happy with the application that you've put forward, and we would like you to come to our province as permanent residents with your family, if you're applying as a family. Now, there's always that condition. Do you accept? Now, it's for you to say, oh, yes, I accept the offer to come to Saskatchewan or to come to Ontario as a permanent resident. The minute you say, I accept, then on your profile, which you have given them the profile number and the Express Entry profile number, you get 600 points added to your total CRS score. Now, if you were on 404, like we calculated earlier, and you add 600 points, just by virtue of going through a province, you get your total CRS score will now come up to 1,000 what and 4. Now with 1,004, if they did another draw, right, for 542 or even for 600, you would definitely receive invitation to apply from IRCC. All right. So it's not a shortcut, it's an alternative to not sitting in the pool waiting for the scores to come down. So rather than sit down in the pool and then say a prayer or two and say, okay, you know what, I'm on 404 and the last draw was 450, I think they're going to come down. You will keep thinking for a long time while others try to get into Canada via the provinces. So I've put a couple of links to take you directly to those provinces. So if I clicked on Saskatchewan now, it will take me to the Saskatchewan website, yeah, where you can create a new account, right? You would put in your account as an SIMP applicant or someone who wants to express interest as a candidate for province of Saskatchewan. And then, of course, you go through the process of creating your profile and all that. Now, we're not going to delve into how to fill out each of the expression of interest for the various provinces. But I'm pretty sure that if you reach out to any of our team members, they would share a particular document which we have written for free on how you can create your profile and get into the submitting a profile for expression of interest for that particular province. For the likes of Ontario and Alberta, I usually tell people that the minute you've created a profile on your Express Entry, the minute you've created an Express Entry profile, they would usually send you a notification of interest if they feel you meet the criteria for which they are drawing for that period. So if you're sitting in the pool at 404 and they were drawing health practitioners, so people who are in the health category, then you would most like, I mean, if you, so Ontario draws based on range. So they could say we want people who have a CRS score between 350 to 405, right? So even if you had 450, you don't fall within that range. So you will never be called, or you won't be called at that point. But for that example we gave with the person who had 404, if he was say for instance a doctor, but he had 404 because he was 35 or he is 35 years old, and he has his medical degree gives him a professional master's degree equivalent, but he's on 404. On 404, because Ontario wants people with CRS between 350 and 405, he will get a notification of interest to apply and submit his application to Ontario. They would review his application, and if they feel that he has the requisite experience to become a permanent resident of Ontario, then he would be nominated. All right. So that's it for all the various provinces that I have on my screen. I mentioned a few minutes ago about certain categories for which people are sent invitation to apply. There are about 6 categories right now. If any of you have been following, you would hear some people rejoicing because a doctor in their family just got invited. Now, if a doctor gets invited to apply under the Federal Skilled Workers Program, it's because he has created a profile, an active profile as a healthcare worker, someone with a healthcare experience, someone who has a requisite education to back up that healthcare knock which he picked. A nurse also falls under healthcare. Nurse aides, people who do personal support work, optometry. I mean, you have quite a number of them that fall under the healthcare occupation. So if you have family members who don't know about this program and are willing to relocate, you can encourage them to come and create their profile, write the IELTS, evaluate their degrees with whatever evaluating bodies, and then create their profile and sit put. You never can tell. They might also get invited. The scores may drop and then they get called. All right. There's a STEM, which talks about those who are in sciences, technology, engineering, and math. The trade occupations are people who are into plumbing, bakers, tailors, some of those trades. You have to have truck drivers, someone who operates the crane at construction sites. They all fall under trade occupations. Transport occupations are people who are in the transport industry, so flight attendants, flight coordinators, supervisors, transport managers, transport supervisors, all that fall under transport occupations. Those who fall under the agriculture and agri-food occupations, of course, people who studied agriculture or something related to that, people who are farm supervisors, horticulturists, people who studied flowers. I mean, I guess that's horticulture, and whatnot. Just know the category for which you're applying for. If you have a French background, you can speak French. I encourage you, if you can speak and write French, and you don't fall under any of these other categories mentioned from 2 to 6, use your French experience and knowledge. Write the TEF or the TCF exam, and you will relocate via the French language proficiency category. I beg you. All right. Um, I took the liberty of taking out a screenshot of some of the draws that they've done between January and today, right? If you look, you would see that in on the 13th of February there was a general draw for 535. So if your CRS score, remember again, case in point, that guy who I created his profile using the CRS calculator 404, you can see that when a general draw is done, at 404, he doesn't qualify. So he might either go through the province and get his 600 points to his 404, which brings him to 1004. And if they did a general draw for 535 again, with his 1004, he'll get selected. So that's what someone who is being intentional about trying to relocate to Canada. He goes above and beyond for himself to increase his points. All right. Rather than just sit in the pool hoping for a miracle. For those who are in the healthcare industry, the last healthcare draws they did was on the 14th of February, and it was for 422. So if you know anyone who's in the healthcare industry, he has an opportunity to get in the pool and hope that the next draw favors him. That of transport happened on the 13th of March. It was 430. As you can see, on the 13th of February, the general draw was 535. But on the 10th of April, the general draw went to 549. So while you're sitting down praying for the draws to come down, it may not. So you have to do something to get up. All right? French language, those who know or understand French, you can see how low the score is, 388. Of course, it's difficult to pick up a second language, but then you got to be intentional about wanting to relocate to Canada if that is your priority for this year. All right? So if you think that you do not meet the criteria or for the other categories, you can go and learn French. You can study French for 6 months to 9 months or 1 year. I know a lady back in 2019, she was 41 years old at the time, and not so many people at that age were able to get into the Express Entry program at 41. Her score was hovered around 421, but they were drawing 441 at the time. And all she did was pick up French language, and she learned it for 1 year and then wrote the exam and passed it. And her score moved from 421 to 471. And the day she got her results, right, was the day they did a draw. And the draw they did was 471. The lady's in Alberta right now. She was intentional about relocating, and it made it happen. And her family have had to thank for that. All right. Provincial notification of interest to apply to any of the provinces that I mentioned in a couple of slides earlier. You have the letter of advice to apply. That's what it's called for Manitoba. You have 60 days to apply for that. And the fees that you pay to Manitoba is 500 Canadian dollars as of today. If that changes tomorrow, we will let you know. All right. For notification, so this is for people who have been invited to apply. So if you took my word for it and said, okay, you know what, I want to go and then try Manitoba, or I want to go and try Ontario, or I want to try Saskatchewan. If they invited you to apply because you meet their score, because they too also have a scoring program, you would be required to make payments for these fees according to the provinces. And the duration for which you need to submit your application varies. For Ontario, you only have 45 days. After 45 days, the notification for interest disappears. So it's only wise that you prepare yourself prior to getting the invitation to apply so that you can submit your application within the time frame given. All right. Ontario is the most expensive. They charge 1,500 for their application. Well, hey, it is what it is. So consider that. Submitting your permanent residence application. So of course, like I mentioned, you need to gather your applications. You need to complete what they call an EAPR, electronic application for permanent residence, which is that section of the application that allows you to complete the various details of the family members who are going to be joining you on that permanent residence application to relocate. Or if you're applying as a single, you just complete your own information You can put in, you'll be expected to put in your family details, whether they're dead or alive, your siblings' details. You might be wondering, why do I need to put my siblings? They're not going with me. Now, remember I mentioned something about gaining 15 points for a sibling residing in Canada as a permanent resident. Now, that sibling, for me, example, right? If my brother wanted to come to Canada, because I mentioned his name on my application as a sibling, he's entitled to not just the 5 points for MEC, but he's also entitled to 15 points on his CRS. If you have a brother or a stepbrother who is completing his application for permanent residence and he doesn't mention your name on the permanent residence application for himself, it's going to be really difficult for you to prove that you're related. So whatever bad blood you think you have with a family member, squash it. If you need 15 points or 5 points to get in through the permanent residence route, all right? Because if the person does not mention your name on the application, you would need evidence to prove that that person is truly your sibling and you're related. And if they are not satisfied with the evidence that you give, then the application will either be refused or you will be banned for 5 years for misrepresentation. Okay. The application fees are stated here, but I understand that they will be increasing on the 30th of April. So no need to take screenshots of this. It's going to increase slightly. Part of the documentations that we submit to on our permanent resident application is the medical exams. But lately they've stated that people upload a blank page for for that section of the application, and they will be informed when to write or go and do the medical test. For Nigeria, there are two centers where you can actually conduct the medical exams when you're informed to actually do it. It's IOM and QLife. For other countries, they also have their own medical centers. So, for instance, I selected Ghana and I hit go. So these are the various places in Ghana where you can conduct your own medical tests. So there's IOM as well. There's it says Adrian Odoye. There's Lila Larry. So there are a bunch of them. I mean, I don't know if we have people in the UK here. So if I hit the UK, so there's Simon Butler in Birmingham. There's in Edinburgh, there's Roy McDougall in Glasgow. So you just need to find the nearest medical center to you. There are a ton of them, and there's that link provided for you. So no one needs to tell you otherwise. All these things are available on the IRCC website. No one can bamboozle you into doing a medical center in a random hospital. If it's not the medical centers on this website, it's a scam. All right. And I implore you not to, whoever tells you to do it in a different medical facility, I want you to go to this website and then put in the name of that, put in the country for where you want to do the medical exam. If that center, which that supposed agent tells you to go to, is not mentioned on this link, then it's a fraud. All right. There are things like, I mean, of course, you need to also upload your police report. Okay, so I'm being triggered. I'm talking too much. There's a police report, which everyone is expected to have, right? For Nigeria, again, there's only one place you can get it, in Lagos. For the United Kingdom, if you have lived in the United Kingdom for more than 6 months, or in any country outside your country of citizenship, you need to get a police report for that country. I couldn't drop all the links for all the countries. I just dropped the most important ones. So the UK and the US. Some people have 6 months visas to relocate to any of these places. I mean, to go to and visit any of these places and stay 6 months or more. So in order for you to, there's something they call the Five Eyes, where immigration information is shared across 5 countries. So United Kingdom, the US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Now, if you visited any of these countries and you never mentioned that you visited those countries, but then you were supposed to drop the police report because you were in those countries longer than 6 months, you will get what they call an ADR, additional documents required, asking you to explain or provide information as to why you didn't mention it or provide that document. Now, if your explanation is not good enough, they will deny you permanent residence to Canada for misrepresentation. The decision as to whether they will ban you for 2 years or 5 years or not ban you at all is entirely up to them. All right. There's something called medical inadmissibility. There are certain medical conditions that prevents people from relocating to Canada under the permanent residence route. Um, the reasons for which you might be medically inadmissible would be because they don't want you to be a danger to the public. They're trying to protect the safety of the public. And then, of course, there is an excessive demand on the amount of health or care that will be provided for you with regards to that supposed ailment or sickness that you have. Again, I put, uh-oh, did I get the link wrong? Must have. Okay, so I'm going to correct this. I don't know why that is giving me that. Maybe that has changed. But I'll get that link corrected so that you have the exact link. I could find it now, but I don't want to waste more time. Where, you know, okay, let me just find it. All right, so that's the link I should have got, but I don't know why it's not. So this link talks about everything. So now this is the threshold for 2024. If for a particular person applying under the permanent residence stream or the FSW stream, seeking relocation to Canada as a PR, and your health for a period of 5 years. So a permanent residence application, once gotten, you get a PR card that's valid for 5 years. Now, within that 5-year period, you can apply for citizenship if you've spent 1,095 days in Canada. Then you can apply to be a citizen. Now, if within a 5-year period, the amount of money that is going to cost you to get help is more than 26,000 per year, or $131,000, then you will become inadmissible because the amount of money allocated for you as a person under this, in quote, healthcare, free healthcare is 131,100. So if you have a certain ailment that will cost the Canadian government 132,000 or 135,000, you would have to provide reasons as to how you will make up for the excess. All right. If you're unable to make up for the excess or your reason is not good enough, then you will be a burden to the Canadian government because they will not want to give you any more assistance more than everybody who is a citizen or permanent resident, more than 131,100. There's no preferential treatment for someone irrespective of the medical condition. So if you think that you can cater for the excess, then you would have to provide reasons as to how you can do that. And the way to do that is to answer what they call a procedural fairness letter, where you would have to explain or give reasons as to why you need to be considered under that program. Okay. Um, I put some of the tests that are usually carried out um, on the medical, during the medicals. Some of them, I don't know how many are usually carried out. I don't know the extent to which the tests are done, but um, I put them out there. So there's the TB Gold, there's the KFT, the kidney function test, there's the LFT, the liver function test. So some people might want to, what do they call it? Run some of these tests, right? Before actually submitting their express entry profile or whatever. I mean, it's up to you. If you understand your medical condition and you feel that you are not in any way going to fall short of any of these um, tests that will be carried out, then by all means, you don't have to run the test. It's only if you're unsure. So you want to save time and then be very sure of your medical condition. Then you can run this test on your own outside those centers that have been listed for where you conduct your medical tests. All right. So again, I talked about the dangers to things. So we get to the point where we're about to, we've submitted our application. What next? We have a group where those who have submitted their applications sit down and talk about um, opportunities. I mean, what next? Are we going to just keep quiet? Are we going to sit down? Do we need to do something? Is there anything that we need to do to fast track our application? Any of those will be running through your head. But I put this thing down to explain to us what happens in the various stages of the submission process. So after submission. So there's something they call R10, completeness check. They're going to check your application to ensure that you have uploaded the right documentation in the placeholders for your application profile. One, if you had a child, maybe Paul, and you uploaded his international passport in the section of Jimmy, your other son, you could get, in fact, you would get refused under completeness check. So they will return your application as incomplete because they were expecting the international passport of Jimmy in Jimmy's placeholder. So you need to be extra careful when you're submitting your application and go through it over and over and over again. If you have to do it 200 times, please do. Because the time frame between when you submit, when you notice the error, and when they refuse your application is very small for this section, which is the R10. You only know that you've completed the R10 completeness check when they send you a medical request. The minute they send you a medical request, which usually takes about a month, then you have completed phase one, which is R10 completeness checks. Most times the medical request comes together with the biometrics request letter. All right. So they will ask you to now go and conduct your medical test in the approved medical center, and as well as do your biometrics with the VFS of the country that you reside in. Once those two are done and submitted, they need to obviously check that you are not a criminal anywhere. That's why the biometrics is collected. And of course, whether you're medically admissible into Canada, they have to run those tests again and be sure that you pass. Once you pass the medical test and your biometrics is okay, most times, most people don't usually have issues with biometrics. They will now begin the main eligibility test, right? That main eligibility test is now to check whether you actually meet the criteria for which you have submitted your application for permanent residence, right? Now, if for any reason you do not meet that criteria, right, then they would either send you an ADR asking for extra explanation, or they will refuse the application and give reasons. All right. Then during that period, it can take between, 2 months, 1 month, up until X number of months, for which they would ascertain whether you actually meet the criteria for which you have applied for. They will check whether the reference letter that you submitted meets the criteria for which you are claiming that experience for. They will check your bank statements to be sure that you actually received salaries to justify that you actually claim that work experience, a bunch of things. Now, if you being sticking on the positive side, if you actually meet the criteria, then Bob's your uncle. They will now issue you what they call an RFV, a request for visa. So a request for your passport. So on approval, you will now be expected to submit your passport with a few documents like the height and eye color form for you to now get your visa stamped and your COPR, which is confirmation of permanent residence, issued to you. No application, and I'm repeating this, no application is the same. The fact that it took your friend 3 months or 4 months to complete his application does not in any way guarantee that your application would either take less or the same amount of time. All right. I had a friend who submitted her application the same day I submitted mine. I waited 17 months for my own application to complete. It took her 4 years to complete hers, but we submitted the same day. Different applications. So no two application is the same. Even if you have a friend, even if it's your twin brother or sister, no two applications are the same. All right. Never confuse or put yourself under unnecessary pressure because some other person has gotten an approval. And because you both submitted on the same day, you should also get an approval. No. Your application will run its course till the end. And when yours completes, that's when yours completes. All right. I mentioned stuff about incomplete applications, especially when you upload documentations in the wrong placeholder, or you upload. So I'll give you an example of someone who just recently submitted his application, but he couldn't get a police report from Dubai. You know the issues that Nigerians are experiencing with regards to getting visas to go to Dubai. So he couldn't get a visa to go to Dubai to get his police report. And the police report from Dubai expects you to be on ground, in person to get it. Now, he had to submit the correspondence that he exchanged between the Dubai police station and himself and hoped that that correspondence was good enough. But his application was returned as incomplete because he didn't submit the right documentation for the police report for Dubai. So he had to find a way to offset whatever fees that he was owing them to ensure that he got the right police report to go back into the pool and then get selected for the same category for which he applied earlier and run the process again. Okay, so be very careful and plan ahead. If there's anything you need to get, especially things like police report, let there be a plan for you to get that. And if it requires you, I know South Africa, they also expect you to be there in person. So if you've been someone who has lived in South Africa for more than 6 months, you need to start looking at how you can either get a visa in anticipation of this or start working towards making payments for whatever you need to make payments for in the South African embassy in the country you reside if you don't want to travel. Make those arrangements today. Don't wait until when you get ITA because remember, you only have 60 days to submit your application to IRCC. And like I mentioned earlier, there are certain things you need to submit when you get an approval for your permanent residence application. And I listed them on this document, so I don't have to talk about it here. But we would find a way to share this slide so that you have an idea of what I have said today. You can make reference to it. And then, of course, use that as a guide to submitting your applications the best way possible. Oh, so and on this slide, I said, once the passports are returned, the only other thing left is for you to buy your travel tickets. Do not purchase your travel tickets until your passports have arrived or are on the way. Because there are people, again, there are people who have gotten an approval on their permanent residency application. The minute it got to the VFS office where it needed to be stamped, it spent another 6 months. So imagine someone who was excited that he got approved, but had to wait 6 months to get his passport back. No two application is the same. None. So don't think because others get theirs in 2 weeks, you'll get yours in 2 weeks. Only purchase your ticket when you're sure that your application has received an update of a confirmation of permanent residence document. So there's a T blah 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 number document issued on your profile saying that the confirmation of permanent residence has been issued. The confirmation of permanent residence document is not a valid document for travel. So it's not a visa. It's just a document that the CBSA officer, when you land Canada, is going to take from you as confirmation that you got permanent residence. And you are expected to guard that document with your life until you get citizenship. That's the only time the document doesn't become valid anymore. All right. It's the visa on the passport that allows you to board the plane. But when you land, the visa becomes null and void. And then the confirmation of permanent residency document is now activated. If you have to get on a plane that transits from here to Dubai first and then from Dubai to Canada, then in Dubai, they're going to want to see your confirmation of permanent residency. When you get to Canada, do not show any other person but the CBSA officer your confirmation of permanent residence. You can put it in a bank and let it be there until you become a citizen. And once you're a citizen, the confirmation of permanent residency becomes null and void. Okay. So you purchase your tickets and say your goodbyes, and then everything is good. So that's the part where I say welcome to Canada. Now, this pretty much concludes my presentation on the step-by-step process on how to assess yourself for eligibility into the Express Entry Profile program, or if you don't meet the criteria for which you would apply under the Express Entry program, you can also go through the paper-based application. At this juncture, I would want to take questions. If you have any, I would answer as many as I can. If you have questions that you think is private or personal to you, you can reach out to any of the admins or the hosts of this program, or reach out to our social media outlets and then ask your question or ask to speak to me. And then, of course, I'll be more than happy to respond to those questions as personal as they come. So I'm going to see how best as I can to go through some of the questions that you guys have asked on the chat. And if there are any questions that are repeated, I'm sorry, I'll have to skip it and hope that if you ever get hold of this presentation, you can listen to it over and over again. It's going to be put on our social media pages. And then, of course, a link to our YouTube channel will be shared once the video is ready for viewing. So the first person asks, while applying for Express Entry, are we supposed to just choose any province? Okay, so there's a section on your Express Entry profile that says, do you want to select one province, two province, three province, or all of them? The choice is yours. You can choose to select all, or you can choose to only be viewed by one particular province. It's up to you. That option is available. All right. The next person, no, says, please, what are the chances for lawyers? Is there a demand for lawyers? From my experience, again, Manitoba is one province that is open to lawyers. Ontario isn't, because they go through the same criteria as well. I haven't. A lawyer can claim administrative assistant. There's a way a lawyer can also, there are some lawyers that handle administrative services. Now, if you're a lawyer who handles administrative services, you also qualify to be, you also can prove that the job role for the NOC for administrative services are also part of the responsibilities that you carried out under that NOC that you're selecting. And then you apply for that particular NOC of administrative services rather than the one for law. All right. So if you're stuck on a particular um, NOC code and you're not sure which one to pick, you can reach out to one of our team members and then ask the question, and then we will give you an idea as to what particular NOC you can pick and which province that is in demand for that particular NOC. Okay, so don't be fixed on one particular NOC and think that that is where you need to be. There are other NOCs that you have also performed or carried out responsibilities for that particular NOC, and if you meet those criteria, then why shouldn't you claim that? All right. Someone says, please, I have about 4 years work experience as a poultry manager, which is good, some years ago. So you can only claim work experience within the last 10 years from today. So if you're going into the pool today, you can claim work experience from today, April the 19th to 2014, April the 18th, maybe, or 19th. So any 3 years you get, or 1 year you get within that 10-year period qualifies you for claiming that NOC. All right. It never occurred to me that I could apply as an agri worker. A friend just called my attention to it. You should buy your friend a drink. The challenge now is that I have already applied for visit visa. Now, in this situation, you need to go on your visit visa application and then find out. Oh, you said you mentioned that you didn't mention that work experience, but then at what point in a 10-year period did you mention your work experience? So if in your visitor visa, you only mention 3 years work experience within a 10-year period, you will not be penalized for the other 7 years that you did not mention on your visitor visa. So before you create your profile and submit, ask us a question and let us be extra sure that yes, you only mentioned 3 years, but you didn't mention the last 7. And now, because you didn't mention the last 7, you have the opportunity to now prove to the government of Canada that in my visitor's visa application, which I submitted in 2020, I only mentioned work experience from 2017 to 2020. But the criteria for which I can claim work experience is 2014 to 2024. So I would now want to claim work experience gotten in 2015 to 2017 as a poultry manager. That will fly. All right. I hope I answered your question. Someone mentioned, can I use the academics IELTS for experience for express entry? And the answer is no. You can only use the general IELTS or the CELPIP general. There are 2 types of CELPIPs. So there's a CELPIP general and then there's a CELPIP something for academics. So you can only use the CELPIP general or the IELTS general or the PTE core. So any of these language tests are conducted. I mean, we do trainings for them. All right. So you can reach out to us. We have a 1-month program. We have a 2-month program. We have tips and games on our app, which you can leverage on for free. And then you just practice and build your vocabulary so that you would be able to write the exam and ace it once. Can I use my digital NIN slip card for IELTS? No, you cannot use the digital, the digital one I'm guessing is the card. So if you have the card, the pin and chip one, the one that has the chip, yes, you can use that as a means of identification for writing the IELTS. But if it's just the paper one, no, you can't, unfortunately. Okay, so I guess that was answered already. In a situation where you studied a STEM course, but your experience is in banking, can you apply for STEM category? Unfortunately, no. Now, I'll break this question down. So I studied computer systems engineering. Um, if I had a banking and I remained a computer systems engineer up until today. Now, if for instance I had a banking experience based on the dynamics of Nigeria, and I'm speaking only because I'm Nigerian, right? There are quite a number of people who study a particular course and then find themselves doing something totally different. There are some provinces, and the likes of Ontario and Saskatchewan, right, that will want you to match your degree with your work experience. Because you studied a STEM course and you found yourself in banking for the last 10 years, you need to avoid those two provinces. That's all I'll say. Avoid those two provinces because if your degree does not match your profession, they will deny you outright. Okay? My spouse is currently studying in Canada, MBA. Congratulations. Which education level should I choose for her? She has to complete the education in Canada first to be able to select the MBA course. Now, if she hasn't completed the course, you cannot select that she has completed or she has an MBA. All right. For the proof of funds, please, what is the duration required? 3 months or 6 months? Um, there is a section of the IRCC website that states that if you're going to submit a savings account, savings, some people call it checking account, it has to be a 6 month period showing that you've had that money for the last 6 months. Now, what most people do is that if they didn't have the money for a 6 month period, they don't want to submit their savings account, they go and fix the money for a period. So they can fix it for 3 months or 6 months and then submit a fixed deposit certificate or an investment certificate showing that that money is for the sole purpose of relocating to Canada. If you're going to submit just a savings account or a checking account, you have to show a 6 month period so that they know that that money is not encumbered. Okay. Someone says proof of fund again. If I'm married with 4 kids and I'll be traveling alone first, must I have? Oh, yes. If you're married and you're adding everyone to the application, right? Whether you're land, excuse me, whether you're landing first or you want to land alone before the others come in, you still need to show proof of funds for the entire family, even if one of the family members is unaccompanied. So there are situations where a couple, maybe the wife decides, I need to, or the husband says he's not willing to relocate at this point. You can go with the children and I'll be putting on the application as unaccompanied. You will still have to show the proof of funds for the entire family. Reasons being that at some point in the application, your family situation could change, and the husband, by some miracle, decides, okay, you know what, I now want to join the family. You cannot escape showing proof that the proof of funds will still now cover the entire family members. So you cannot put yourself as one and show proof of funds for only one person and then say you're a family of 6. Will sickle cell anemia cause medical inadmissibility? Again, I was saying something about um, the amount of money that is required for taking care of that particular ailment. If it goes past it, based on their own calculation, right? Based on their own calculation, if they say, okay, you know what, sickle cell anemia is going to cost us about $220,000 a year. They don't have $220,000 a year for health for you. So they're going to put you on the inadmissibility path and send you a PFL saying, okay, you know what? I think you're inadmissible because of this ailment. Can you prove to us that the difference, or can you tell us why we should allow you to be admissible under this particular cause? Then it's the onus of you convincing them that, oh, you see the difference between 131,100 and the 230, I can cover it. Or this is how I've been able to manage it in Nigeria. And the amount of drugs I'm spending for this particular ailment, this is the research I've conducted in Canada, and this is how much it will cost me. And by the nature of the job I'll be doing and the wife and what my spouse will be doing, this is the supposed costs, no, not cost, income we're going to be getting, which would enable us meet the difference between how much is allocated for a permanent resident and a citizen or a citizen and how much we think we're going to spend. All right? That's the thing you need to consider. But things like TB, tuberculosis, which is easily contagious, right? It has nothing to do with how much we spend. They will just make you inadmissible straight. In fact, you won't even need to get in, your medicals will fail. All right? And if it fails, then of course you're not moving forward. So it's either the person who is preventing the family members to moving forward. So, I mean, if you're a family of 5 and then one person's ailment is stopping the family members from moving forward, then of course, they're going to ask you whether you want to drop that family member and then proceed. Okay. Please, at what stage will one submit proof of funds? So you submit your proof of funds at the point where you are given invitation to apply. All right. So when you're about to submit your documents to IRCC, that's when you are given that's when you're supposed to present your proof of funds. Please, can we get the slides? Of course we can. What if the person gets an invitation from Canada? All right. So I don't understand this question. Someone says, to be qualified under the agriculture path, must I have a degree in agric? Again, my experience lately, so agricultural category only started sometime in September or October of last year. And a few people I know didn't have a degree in agriculture and were able to scale through. But don't assume. You need to get in touch with a licensed immigration consultant, or you can seek our own opinion. We're not licensed, but we have a wealth of knowledge. I'll put it out there. Let no one say I said I was licensed. No. We just have knowledge in some of these things and we give it out for free. Yeah. So I've seen with my own 2 eyes where someone who didn't have a degree in agriculture was able to get permanent residence status. So it all depends on how well you present your application to the government of Canada. Okay. I have a 10-year work experience as a salesperson, currently trying to round off my MBA. Can I apply to Express Entry without the MBA? Of course you can. Of course you can. Please, are we going to get the slides, of course? Yeah. All right. So someone said, what?
Hi.
Oh, yeah, hi.
Yes. Sorry.
I've run out.
Okay. So our time is fast spent. But
Okay,
I have
I'm
a
sorry.
question here. It's like I think some other questions has covered it up, and I think it's important if you could help us address it. So the question, please, are certificates from online learning platforms like Coursera and Allison, for example, valid for boosting points? So that's the first question. And the second question is, should I go on with the second?
Yeah, please.
All right, okay. If I discover that my skill set isn't really sought after, can I go train and get certified in another NOC and change my NOC on Express Entry?
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay, so first question. Certificates from Coursera and any other place. Every certificate or degree you get needs to be converted to Canadian standard level. And the likes of WES, ICAS, ICES have to evaluate that particular degree. Now, if they are unable to evaluate that certificate you have or convert it to a standard in the Canadian education level, then of course you can't get points for that. So if you did a course for 6 weeks, the minimum amount of time on the education level for any courses is 1 year. So clearly that one would not work. All right. Then the second question regarding getting experience in a different NOC. Of course, you can do that. However, you need to get a minimum of 1 year in that new NOC before you can now qualify under the express entry criteria. Before you meet the express entry criteria for that particular work experience. So even if you get the experience, you've studied and you've practiced and done everything, and you now say that, okay, I've gotten a job, you need to have worked 1 year before you can now create a profile using that new experience. Okay.
All right, so I have another question here. It says, how long is needed to submit proof of funds after you get an invitation?
You have 60 days to submit invitation to apply. So you have 60 days to submit your application. And if you're submitting your application, you need to submit your application with your proof of funds. You can't submit it without it.
All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking your time to break down the entire process. I think we've exhausted the questions, but if you have other questions for us, I dropped the contact number for PrepMeWell on the group, and also our you can just search for us on any of the social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, X, and LinkedIn at PrepMeWell, right? And we would be available to answer your questions. This webinar is going to be made available on our YouTube channel. So as soon as it is up, we are going to receive a notification via email that the recording is up on YouTube for us to go back and replay, particularly for those of us who probably our network wasn't too strong, or we're trying to multitask, join the webinar and also do some other things. So thank you so much for sticking with us to the very end. Casey, thank you so much. It was a very insightful, time with you. I love how you broke down the step-by-step, took us through some practical aspects just to help us understand it. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving us out of your time. All right. And I hope for every participant that it has been worth the investment. Thank you so much for joining us. And subsequently, we are going to, have more webinars. By next month, we'll be holding another webinar. So please, be on the lookout on our Instagram, on, social media. And then probably you got to know about this webinar on your friend's status. When it's next month, please, you probably want to send a reminder to your friend, to ask for next month's webinar link, right? And then if you have more questions, based off what you've learned today in our coming webinar, would be glad to answer them. And like I said, we dropped our contact number already on the chat. You can always reach us if you have any question, and we will offer our candid advice to you. Thank you so much, everyone. So let's enjoy the rest of our evening, morning, afternoon, depending on where you joined it from. Thank you so much, Casey. Thank you, everyone.